So in the last video, we talked about completing the square for a expression. This is a question that if you would like extra credit, you can answer it in your journal. And when you come to me in class to show me that you did your lesson notes, I want you to let me know what did you get as an answer to this question, and I will give you a few extra credit points. Okay? So let's move on to example 3. That way I also know if you're listening to the video, because you wouldn't hear that if you're not listening to the video. All right, anyways, let's start with example 3. So example 3, we're now going to take what we just did, but we're going to help us solve the equation. So we just did the beginning parts of this. All right, now we're going to actually use it to help us. So we're going to solve this equation by completing the square. So what do? Let's first start with our equation. So we're going to say x squared minus 10x plus 7 equals 0. Right, left side in the form of x squared plus bx. So that means that we want to move this 7 to the other side. So in order to move it to the other side, I have to make it the opposite. So we're going to have x squared minus 10x equals negative 7. Now here's what we just did in example 3. That's where it's going to come in. So we're going to do b squared. So we're going to say b is our negative 10. We're going to divide it by 2, and we're squaring that. So what does that equal? Negative 5 squared, which is 25. So we're going to add that number to each side. So what that looks like is x squared minus 10x. Now we're going to add 25 to this side, but in order to make our equation balanced, we have to also add 25 to this side. All right, why did we do that? Because now we can rewrite this as a perfect square, just like we did in the previous example. So we have x minus 5, and then it's squared. What does that equal? Well, what's negative 7 plus 25? If you said 18, you are correct. So notice I have the steps right here for you. So we wrote this side as a binomial squared. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides. All right, so we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we're essentially going to square root that, and it becomes x minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 18. So now we need to move this 5. So we are going to add 5 to each side. So we're going to do plus 5 plus 5. So we have x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 18. Now we're going to simplify the radical. If you don't need to simplify the radical, you can skip this step. However, we do need to simplify the radical. So remember, in previous warm-ups, we've talked about this. We can break this up as 9 times 2. We can find the square root of 9 by taking the square root as 3, and we're left with the square root of 2. So we have x equals 5 plus or minus 3 square root of 2. Now, our solutions. We cannot combine a whole number with a radical. The radicals have to be the same in order to combine them. So what we would say is that we have x equals 5 plus 3 square root of 2, and we have x equals 5 minus 3 square root of 2. So both of those would be your solutions. All right. So again, follow these steps while you're doing these examples. So let's look at B. We're going to do B. We're going to follow the steps. We're going to start off, we have this equation. We're going to write the left side in the form of x squared plus bx. So what does that mean? That means we need to move this 8 to the other side. So we have x squared minus 4x equals negative 8. So what is next? Next step, add b divided by 2 squared to each side. So let's look at what is our b divided by 2 squared. I'm going to do that over here. We have negative 4 divided by 2. We're squaring it. What's negative 4 divided by 2? Negative 2. What's negative 2 squared? 4. So we are now going to add 4 to both sides. So we have x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals negative 8 plus 4. Okay, that way it keeps it balanced. Now we're able to take this side. We have a perfect square trinomial, so we're able to set it up. We have x minus, well, what times itself equals 4 that you can add to itself to get 4? 2. And then what is negative 8 plus 4? Negative 4. So if you look back up, we wrote the left side as a binomial squared. We are now on this step, take the square root of each side. So now we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we have x minus 2 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 4. Now, you cannot stop there and say no solution. We have now learned about what the square root of negative numbers are. They're imaginary. So what does this mean? That means if you were to graph this, your graph would not actually cross the x-axis. That's all it means. All right, so we're going to still keep going. We're going to add 2 to both sides. All right, I'm going to come over here and write it. So we have x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 4. So let's simplify our radical. Well, 4 is a perfect square, so I know the square root of 4 is 2. And then I have this negative. So I could say x is equal to 2 plus 2i. Or minus. I forgot the plus or minus, still stays there. So we have 2 solutions. All right, our solutions are x equals 2 plus 2i and x equals 2 minus 2i. So those are both of your solutions. All right, so I have 2 for you guys to try. So pause your video and give those 2 a try, doing the same method. So look at each step as you go through it. Well, as I was doing this, I just realized that I deleted the wrong equation, so this one we already did, so give this one a try. To start you off though, because I just noticed they gave us an example that we don't normally have, we can divide each one of these by your a value. So if you have an a value, divide everything by that a value. So in this case, we're going to divide each term by negative 3. And yes, whatever's on this side, you divide by negative 3 as well. So then this gives us x squared plus 6x plus 2. And that equals 0. Because 0 divided by negative 3 is still 0. All right, now give it a try. Okay. So if you continued working this out, you followed the steps, you would get the final solutions are x equals negative 3 plus the square root of 7 and x equals negative 3 minus the square root of 7. 7 is a prime number, so it does not have a perfect square factor. Okay, so let's move on to the next example. Example 4. All right, so we're going to solve this by completing the square. The coefficient a is not 1, so you must first, I guess we were supposed to do this first before the other self-assessment question. Oh well, now you know how to do it. So maybe we'll treat this one like a self-assessment question. We'll just do it together. I'm just kidding. Okay, so first you must, we'll treat this one like it. First you must, what did I tell you to do? Divide. Divide each side by a. So we're going to write the equation. All right, start off. We have 3x squared plus 12x plus 15 equals 0. So what is our a value? In this case, it's positive 3. So you're going to divide everything by 3. So divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. Technically, I know it's just 0, but to be in the habit of dividing everything by 3, that is my suggestion. So now we have x squared. 12 divided by 3 gives us 4. And 15 divided by 3 gives us 5. Now the rest of it's just like the last example, so you should be a little quicker at this part. So we're going to write the left side in this form. So that means we're moving the 5 to the other side. So we have x squared plus 4x equals negative 5. Don't know why that box is so much smaller. All right, now we're going to do our b squared divided by 2. So we have 4 divided by 2 squared equals 2 squared, which is 4. So that's the number we're adding to each side. So we have x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals negative 5 plus 4. So we have x squared plus 4. Oh, nope. Stop. Not following directions. Write the left side as a binomial squared. So now we have x plus 2 squared. This is the part we've been doing. And then negative 5 plus 4 gives us negative 1. So now we're going to take the square root of each side. Sorry if I got loud. The people outside at lunch right now are extremely loud. Hopefully you can't hear them. So x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 1. So what are we going to subtract from each side? We need to get rid of that 2, so we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So minus 2, minus 2. We get x equals plus or minus, or actually it's easier if you write the number first and then the plus or minus. So let me pause. Sorry, that outside people are very distracting right now. They're just very loud. All right, so we have that. So now we're going to write our solution in terms of I. Well, what's the square root of negative 1? I. So we have x equals negative 2 plus or minus I. So what are our solutions? I'm going to write the final answer right here. So x equals negative 2 plus I, and x equals negative 2 minus I. So those are our two solutions. Okay, so since this self-assessment question, I treated like an example in a way, go ahead and start this one. See how far you can get with part B. You are going to have to move the 68 to this side, so you are going to have well, actually, you can leave it there. You can do, as long as you're doing, like I said, where you divide everything by the a value, then you'll be fine. So divide everything by the a value and go as far as you can. All right, so hopefully you divided everything by 4. You got that. Now, this next part you should now know how to do. We have done it multiple times. We started off with doing it in example 2. Then we added to it in example 3. We just did it again in example 4. So please pause your video and attempt to answer the rest of this question. All right, so hopefully you got at least to this part. Took the b value, which was 8, divided by 2. You get 4. 4 squared is 16. So rewrote it like this. Remember, you have to add 16 to both sides, so that's what I did there. Negative 17 plus 16 gives us negative 1. And now we're taking the square root of both sides. So then we have x plus 4 equals the square root of negative 1, plus or minus. All right, so then what's our next step? We're going to subtract 4 from both sides. So now we have x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 1, which is I. So your two solutions are x equals negative 4 plus I, and x equals negative 4 minus I. So no self-assessment question with this one because we did it in the previous part. So no worries, you know, I have my moments. So let's go ahead and let's talk about writing in vertex form. So we're going to use this same idea to help us write a quadratic function in vertex form. All right, so recall that vertex form of a quadratic function is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k, where h comma k is your vertex. So remember, this is the opposite. So h is the opposite of what's in here. Because remember, this, when we translate a graph left or right, we go the opposite direction. So same idea. So we can write a quadratic function in vertex form by completing the square. So let's make that happen. All right, we're going to do that in this question. Again, this question is very similar to what we've been doing. All right, we're just putting a different spin on it. So hopefully by the end of the lesson, you'll be a professional at this. So we're going to write the function. Y equals x squared minus 12x plus 18. So remember, our goal is to write it in vertex form. So we're going to prepare to complete the square. All right, now this part is slightly different, but the same idea. Okay, so we're going to say y plus some number is equal to x squared minus 12x plus some number, and then we're plus 18. So we're taking this part here and writing it here. All right, so we're taking this part here, that's your x squared plus bx, and we're going to rewrite it here. So we're doing very similar to the previous one. We're just moving the 18 because remember we need that plus k value. So we're going to move the 18 out and we're going to add whatever this number is to both sides. So how do we figure out that number? We do b divided by 2 squared. So we're going to take our negative 12, divide it by 2, square it. We get negative 6. Negative 6 squared gives us 36. So we're going to add 36 to both sides. So we have y plus 36 equals x squared minus 12x plus 36, and then your plus 18. So we are going to write just the x squared minus 12x plus 36 as a binomial squared. So just that part. All right, so that's what I'm going to do here. So we have x plus, oh, not plus, minus, my apologies, x minus 6 squared plus 18. And then we still have y plus 36. Well, in order to be in vertex form, we can't have this 36. So what do you think we need to do? We're just going to solve for y by subtracting 36. So if we subtract 36 here, we're going to do it here, not inside. Can't subtract inside. So this cancels out. We're left with y equals x minus 6 squared. And then what is 18 minus 36? Negative 18. And so now we have the function in vertex form. So the vertex form of the function is y equals x minus 6 squared minus 18. What is our vertex? The opposite of this. So 6 comma the same, negative 18. So that is our vertex. Okay. Did I do it? Yes, I do have an extra example of this one. So let's give this one a try. You may need your journal if you need a little more room. I do have some self-assessments of these, so if you want to treat this one like a self-assessment, and if you do great, then you could skip the self-assessments. If you don't do great, then guess what? We have 2 self-assessments that we can look at. So we're going to do exactly what we did with the last question. So we need to take this part here, and we're going to take b divided by 2 and square it. So we have to add something to both sides. Did I just do the same? Is this the same question? Oh, whew, that plus 18 and you know with earlier is throwing me off. All right. So what number goes in here? Well, what's 8 divided by 2? And square it. So 16. So we're going to add 16 to both sides. So now we have y plus 16 equals x minus 4 squared, because this part we've been doing the whole lesson. So we should be professionals by now. And so now we need to move the 16 to the other side. How do we do that? By subtracting it. So I will rewrite it up here so I can show that. So we are going to subtract 16. And remember, you should be following the steps that's on the previous paper. And then 18 minus 16 gives us positive 2. And now you need to list your vertex. So what is our vertex? 4, 2. Remember, opposite, same. This would go to the right 4 units. That would go up 4 units. All right, I'm going to give you the two self-assessment questions. So if you did not get that last one right or you did not try it on your own, please give these two a try and pause the video. All right, so hopefully you actually gave these a try to see where you're at with the lesson, if you still have questions or not. All right, so you should have, this would be your vertex form, this would be your vertex, vertex form, vertex. All right, I think we may just have one question left, and it's a word problem. There are no self-assessments to go with this. All right, the height y in feet of baseball t seconds after it is hit can be modeled by the function given. Find the maximum height of the baseball. How long does it take to hit the ground? So I kind of put some things on how you could look at this. First, you need to understand the problem. You're given a quadratic function that represents the height of a ball. You're asked to determine the maximum height of the ball and how long it is in the air. So we need to make a plan. We want to write a function in vertex form to identify the maximum height. Then find and interpret the zeros to determine how long the ball takes to hit the ground. Then we solve and check it, write the function in vertex form by completing the square. All right, seems like a lot, but it's essentially the same thing we've been doing, just in word form. So we're going to write the function. Y equals negative 16t squared plus 96t plus 3. All right, we're going to factor negative 16 from both the first two terms. So we have y equals, we're factoring out negative 16 to make our life easier. So then we have t squared minus 6t. And we still have that plus 3. So now we're going to prepare to complete the square. So this is going to be our a value. So this part we're going to prepare the square. So this is the only part that's different, is that a. All right, so we need y plus a number is equal to negative 16 times t minus 6t plus a number plus 3. So what number are we adding to each side? Well, negative 6 divided by 2 gives us negative 3. Negative 3 squared gives us 9. So we are adding 9 to both sides. All right, I'm going to skip down to this step here. If you want to rewrite it, you can. And we're going to write it as a binomial squared. So we have y plus 9 equals negative 16. And then we have t plus 3 squared, or minus 3. I don't know why I keep doing that. T minus 3, because our b term is negative. All right, now we're solving for y. So the idea is the same. We still want to get rid of this 9. How do we get rid of it? We subtract it. So minus 9, you can only minus 9 there. So now we have y equals negative 16, t minus 3 squared, and 3 minus 9 gives us negative 6. So what is our vertex? Our vertex is 3, negative 6. All right, so now we need to find the maximum height of the ball. All right, so we want to substitute 0 for y and solve. So we're going to take our equation, negative 16 t minus 3 squared minus 6, set it equal to 0. And now we're going to solve it just like we did in lesson 2. All right, so we're going to add 6 or lesson 1. I don't remember which one it was, 1 or 2. One of those, we did it. All right, so we're going to add 6 to both sides. That gives us negative 16 t minus 3 squared. Now we have positive 6. So then what are we going to do? Divide both sides by negative 16. All right, so we have t minus 3 squared equals 6 divided by hold on, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Now we have negative 0.375. All right, so now we take the square root of both sides. So we're going to have t minus 3 equals some of them just don't seem right. I might have to look at this question. I don't know, something doesn't seem right because we shouldn't have a negative inside our square root. What did I forget to do? I'm going to come back in just a second. Sorry, guys. All right, I figured it out. Oh, my goodness, lady. So, remember this step I decided to skip? Yeah, I shouldn't have. So, because we factored out this 16 and we have this 9, we actually have to add 9 times negative 16 to both sides, which is 144. But it's negative. So, I apologize, but I don't want to start this video all the way over. Hopefully you used pencil. If not, get some white out. All right. So even though we added 9, we're multiplying it, we now have this. So we have y minus 144 equals, this rest is fine. It's just that value. And my red flag on that, if you notice when I got down, I knew that my height could not be negative. All right, so now I have to add 144 to both sides. All right, so I'm adding 144 here to cancel it out, but I have to add 144 here, and I do not get negative 6. I now get 147. So my vertex is not 3 comma negative 6. My vertex is 3 comma 147. All right, so let's fix this. Where did okay, so it's this part right here. So we had plus 147. So now we need to subtract 147 on both sides. And we no longer get 6. We get negative 147. So now, when we divide a negative by a negative, we get a positive. And so that will make more sense. All right. So, again, I apologize. I am human. I make mistakes. So if we take negative 147 and we divide it by negative 16, we get 9.1875. All right, so we're going to find the square root of that, 9.1875. But we need to get rid of this t, so remember we're going to add the t to both sides, not the t that you spill. And we have t is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 9.1875. So that is our solution. So time cannot be negative, right? So if we do 3 minus, that's going to give us negative. So time cannot be negative. Therefore, we only have one option, because if I subtract, so we could do this in a calculator. I know y'all love it when I do that. I'll just give you the answer. All right, so if we work this out, 3 plus square root of 9.1875. So if you put that in a calculator, you would get approximately 6 seconds for that one. All right, if you do 3 minus the square root of 9.1875, you would get approximately negative 0.03. So, and this would be seconds. Well, time can't be negative. So the maximum height of the ball is that 147 feet from our equation, and it takes 6 seconds for the ball to hit the ground. Sorry about my mistake. Hopefully it didn't mess you up too much. If you have questions and you'd like to talk about another one in class, we can. So the only difference is because of that a value that we had to multiply it with that number that we added to both sides. So that part was a little different. All right, that is officially the end of this lesson. So hopefully you got a good understanding, since we did do a lot of repetition, just building on it each time. But if you have questions, please come ready to ask them in class, and I will see you in the next class.